Thanks again, Adam.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As always, we'll likely start asking our questions. Shaif, maybe you can start.
Yeah, the first question, I know this will be a very broad and general question, but in what ways can blockchain affect artistic processes and artistic creation in general? Like, what do you think?
In general, I think demands an answer from various perspectives at the same time, because for most people, when they think of blockchain, they think of blockchain as a medium. Some people think it's rather a financial tool, of course, associated with cryptocurrencies. Then most people that actually start knowing something about what blockchain is and then looking for some relation to art start thinking of NFTs, of course, so non-fungible tokens. And so, as you know, in some way, using this token format to embed either on-chain or off-chain artistic information, whether linking to an image or linking to a sound file. We have these marketplaces such as based on Hic et Nunc, Theia.art, or other ones that or OpenSea right now more centralized than decentralized, perhaps. But in various ways, we have these NFTs on one side, and now we also have more new types of ways of exploring art on the blockchain, which is very much interesting for us in our research cluster, which is how to produce generative art NFTs. So you can see, for instance, these types of platforms like FX Hash or Artblocks, to mention just two big ones at the moment, where you can see artists do not embed a link to content that's outside of the blockchain in a form of a standalone file, but rather they put either on-chain or on IPFS, this interplanetary file system, a computer code that executes to create a piece of art for you in real time. So that's a very interesting use case of our artistic use case, which is really only possible on chain from several perspectives, if you think about it, because of course algorithmic art has a very long history now, and computer art, algorithmic art has a very long history, but we've never before had such a situation to discover a certain aspect of artworks to see that they can have this sort of vitalism and this kind of decentralized vitality, to use the term, that to give you a simple explanation, imagine that once you put such a generative code on chain, it will be forever there, executable when its condition is being met. This I often create this comparison to a vending machine, like a vending machine on the street where you just input a coin and maybe you get a can of Coke, and then essentially imagine you have like a smart contract where which contains some piece of code, and when its conditions are being met, for instance financial conditions, but doesn't have to be financial conditions, then it will create a new work of art. And I'm saying this immediately, not only financial conditions, to stress that while people think very often of blockchain as inevitably financial medium, it can have these very artistic notions being executed through the mechanisms that it incorporates, such as this condition exactly. We can think, of course, yes, if you pay 5 Teslas or 5 Ethers, maybe you get a new piece of art. But what if the condition is to check via some application programming interface that there is an enough number of viewers for the piece of code to be triggered, right? Or maybe it could check for weather, and only when there's good weather, then the art would unfold itself through the code execution, right? So we can speculate on various types of artistic use cases that would emerge this way. Now, of course, in platforms like Hicket-Nong or like in platforms like FXHash, this type of working with conditions is yet not implemented, right? So this is something which I can tell you maybe later about, that we have a small project now with another computer programmer friend. We want to create our own platform actually for different types of future art on the blockchain, where we already consider these types of use cases. But I think to not
So not only music, but
yeah, but to keep short. You mean about our platform? Yeah, we are expecting to create a broad platform as well. Yes, to close up the question is indeed, I think right now most of the artistic use cases we should group into maybe 3 categories. So we spoke about two of them, NFTs and generative art NFTs. But of course, we should also mention decentralized autonomous organizations. So this kind of, if you to keep it simple, if you brought this notion of a forum from the Web2 art platforms, right? You might now have a kind of algorithmically executed forum where there's no central intermediary, and the rules of how the community works together could be encoded within various types of smart contracts to maybe distribute the finances of the group to allow some management of common resources. So yeah, I think this type of 3 use cases very broadly, of course, and then with nuances behind them, that would be probably the most complete answer so far.
So what do you think musicians should do to have more say in the blockchain ecosystem? What will be the downside of musicians not engaging with blockchain?
We can already see on these mentioned platforms, there's not a big share of musical works. If you go either to Hicket-Nong, you will find, of course, popular music examples, but coming from the academic background, I'm of course always trying to seek for some more critical pieces of art, maybe not seeking so much popular engagement, but to see what are really the experimental use cases as well. And quite frankly, there is not a lot of these so far, and to give some kind of diagnosis of why that could be the case, I think right now we can see that a lot of musicians working with algorithms, working with computer music, are very often trained also on conservatoire level in making this art in very specific environments. For instance, this is using MaxMSP or coding in Super Collider, not so much coding on the level of JavaScript for the web browser, for instance. So in that case, if they were to create a new piece of generative art NFT for FXHash, for instance, like I have 3 of these on FXHash, it's not so easily transferable skill from MaxMSP or pure data for that matter. And there is actually, I saw one artwork on FXHash, which is kind of like a small manifesto that maybe a pure data patcher should come to FXHash, because we can see that in the last few years, there are already initiatives to create bridges between the 2 environments. For instance, MaxMSP has this Rainbow library now, which is an extension of MaxMSP that allows you to have MaxMSP patchers inside the web browser. And Pure Data has now this initiative of WebPD, Web Pure Data, which will also be bringing this bridge. So I think inevitably, with time, a lot of artists from this very rich group of musicians working with MaxMSP and Pure Data will probably get interested in the possibilities of using the blockchain as a medium, hopefully, because I think it's very promising. But also at the same time, we will need to see, I believe, platforms that are more tailored for working with such musical data. If you see FX Hash, of course, it's very universal in a sense that you're seeing a piece of art which is browser based. It's literally like a small website within a website, right? that one is creating. So in that sense, yes, but although it might feel that it's kind of tailor-made more for exactly this web-based, which kind of prioritizes visual, right? If I am just a sound-based artist without so much expertise in the visuals, maybe I might feel discouraged from using the platform. Or even if I would create something really extraordinary in terms of sound, but don't know how to make it look good, it's not that... it's not so much not to critique FX Hash on this. I think they are a brilliant platform, and you can do great things there. It's pretty universal in that sense. But for artists, your original question was what are the dangers for artists not to engage with blockchain, right? I think it's one possible way of engaging with art. Of course, there are many various legitimate ways, but that one definitely for ones that want to engage with music on the technological level and on with some medium that is right now really unexplored, but enabling a lot of various possibilities in terms of exploration. I would compare it. I do compare it actually in our book to the early internet era. You know, when I speak about creative networks by Russell Smythe, the concept, and then I extend it to decentralized creative networks. This is exactly to create this comparison that early experimenters on the internet, when they started creating art servers, these FTP connections, and which enabled them various types of collaboration. Now we could see these types of explorations being explored on the blockchain medium. So the main lost quality, I think, would be in not exploring the possibilities of the experimental, perhaps.
Yeah.
Can you explain briefly what hypermusic is, and how can a musician get value out of the concept of hypermusic, maybe in relation to the blockchain technology?
Sure, hypermusic. The best would be, of course, that my supervisor Paulo de Assis, who is the originator of the concept, would explain it. But then, if I would make any mistake, then I apologize him in advance. But of course, I can try. So, hypermusic concept by Paulo de Assis is built on this concept by Timothy Morton. By the way, using the opportunity, I want to invite everyone who's watching this to attend our conference at Orpheus Institute in November, 17-18 of November 2025. And Timothy Morton is announced our first keynote speaker. So it should be very, very interesting, and we're looking forward to this engaging presentation. Now, to come back to the hypermusic concept. So hyper objects are these objects that are wide encompassing various types of understandings, but are kind of they are measurable but kind of invisible. And to the example that Timothy Morton always brings us the original example in the book on hyper objects is the global warming. So it's like an object, but it's not a physical, graspable object, although we can measure it over time and we can see it progressing. So in that sense...
Also the internet, I think, is...
Or the internet is a hyperobject in that sense. And if you think, it's a kind of theory of everything, if you want to look at scale. But jokes aside, is this hyper object notion, to see various objects being entangled with various other objects. In global warming, we could say it's kind of not so much linked to one temporal notion of what it is, because as Morton argues, the end of the world already happened with the invention of the steam machine, right? So because already like the invention of a steam machine triggered the existence of a hyper object of global warming, and the end of the world is already embedded as a concept within that hyper object of global warming, right? Now, what is the conceptual invention of Paulo de Assis? You need to know that previously his work in the ERC European project, concluding in 2018 with his book Logic of Experimentation, was all about developing a concept of musical works as assemblages. So linking to continental philosophy, to works of Gilles Deleuze, especially works like The Thousand Plateaus. And then to see musical works as assemblages is essentially this, to not say that, if I have a musical score, that this musical score is just the piece of music. A musical work is more than one inscription of the musical work. It's also all the recordings, all the performances, what we subjectively think about it, what the performers through their embodiment, how they perform it. So all these, also various different notions of what this piece is, it all kind of creates an assemblage of what that musical work is. And that assemblage is not one object existing in one time, but it's a constantly evolving notion of what that musical work is. To give you an example, a piece by Beethoven, the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven, had a completely different meaning in the times of Beethoven, but now through various cultural interpretations over the last few hundred years, we have it evolved to be maybe a cultural landmark. Maybe it has some associations with a country or with some maybe nationalist even visions of, right? So we can think this way. And then the conceptual invention of Paulo to think of hyper music is to maybe bring this understanding of musical works as assemblages and linking it to the concept of Morton, to actually start seeing musical objects rather as this kind of particles, as Paulo describes them, right? And if you start looking on the blockchain, when you have these examples of artworks like the particle collection that Paulo mentions in his chapter, is that you might now have a fractional ownership, for instance, of a painting, right? Which not so much possible to have a 1/100th part of a Mona Lisa before blockchain, right? But now with initiatives like the one by Banksy, you can have maybe fractional ownership of an object, of a digital object, with with the ownership enforcement on the blockchain platform, which is interesting, of course. And for Paulo, this concept, I think, was very interesting to link to blockchains, his kind of conceptual and philosophically grounded way of entering intellectually the medium of blockchain. So Paulo's chapter in the book, is very much about this.
And let's come to the AI, of course. And in your vision, what's the ideal relationship between like human composers and AI agents in the decentralized creative networks?
So in my vision, as in my chapter, right? Of course, in the performative transactions chapter, it's all about saying right now, especially if we're seeing with the development of LLMs, there's many arguments that LLMs maybe are not that path straight towards human level intelligence. Some say on the other side, there's this big institutional hype right now. Everything is about LLMs. Let's create every kind of possible application with LLMs on board. Inevitably, at the end of the day, LLM is a very useful device that a lot of people use now every day. To my own practice of being a researcher every day, to use it with various types of tools to use deep research for discovering various types of things. It's just a very useful tool. Now, to bring this to connection with blockchain. On the blockchain, we can of course see various types of actants, right? And we essentially, when we participate in a blockchain network as maybe artists, we produce a piece of art. That piece of art, from the blockchain's perspective, is associated to some kind of hash, right? Our public address, and that hash has perhaps ownership of or the authorship of some piece of art. Now, if we think of such projects like, for instance, TerraZero or Plantoid, I think it's interesting to give this background. So, TerraZero is this conceptual project of Germany, of a forest in Germany, which owns itself. It has like a public identity on the blockchain, and through various types of sensors, it can monitor its own growth, well-being, like levels of humidity. And then the idea is that it can make its own trades on the blockchain, right? So it can essentially self-sustain its own well-being by getting funding from selling its own wood, and then maybe commissioning people to take care of its other parts monitored by the sensors. And in a sense, there's no one entity that can control such a forest. So it's a kind of an artwork that owns itself, right? It's like our colleague Martin Zeilinger from our research group wrote an article about this called Blockchain Vitalism at Outland. Then another example, Plantoid by Primavera de Filippi, a very interesting case in which you have a sculpture of a plant that commissions the next artist to create the next copy of that plant. So essentially you have, like a piece of art that has a way of reproduction. And then it commissions the next artist to create its new version that gathers funds. And when enough funds are being collected, it commissions the next artist and distributes the reward. So it's not in the hand now anymore of one creator, but it's in the hand of community to actually handle the reproduction of the plant. And as far as I know, a few iterations actually happened. So now, if we think of all these kind of post-humanist notions of who an actant can be in this context, and who the actant can be on the blockchain, we can very quickly think of an example that an AI agent, especially now with LLMs using various types of tools and using types of iterative reasoning, that an AI agent can essentially become such an entity, maybe an artist, maybe an entity producing or manipulating art. So in that vision that I have in my chapter in Decentralized Music is to create a sort of kind of ecosystem where we could see humans and maybe various types of post-human actants as collaborating together on creating various types of art. Then very importantly in this framework that I am envisioning is not only about us maybe perceiving an artwork of an AI agent or whatever that would mean, an AI agent perceiving an artwork by us. But then it's more about collaboration. So this was what I previously was mentioning, not so much possible yet in platforms, maybe like the existing art platforms on the blockchain. But what we want to propose with my friend Michał Skarżyński, we are developing now an API server, and that will be linking. It will be an open source server for everyone to link with the blockchain to create this kind of vending machines for various types of artistic reusable structures. So if you think about this in musical terms, let's say that I have one smart contract which, when its conditions are being met, and now either financial or non-financial, then it would always trigger a major chord, But it maybe, to give a very simplistic example, it would always trigger a major chord. Then somebody else, maybe a human or an AI agent, could create such a vending machine that would always position some chord, whatever chord it would receive, in certain time, or maybe in some other distribution. Then we can imagine that all of music theory could be essentially encoded as all of these kind of particles in Paul's terms, but now this generative vending machine for musical structures that now can be linked together interoperably to create collaborative works. And what blockchain enables is essentially kind of self-developing economy on top of it. Because now imagine that I want to enter such a vending machine on the blockchain. I would, of course, have to invest as a creator of such a vending machine to pay the gas fees of the blockchain to make it available for everyone there. Now, if we think in terms of commons, then there might be someone with interest of just open sourcing such a chord machine for everyone. And once it's there, once the fee for the minters was paid, then essentially the concept will be free to use, because that's the technicality of blockchain, that the calls to just trigger a function that is already there, to trigger the smart contract, if it does not have its own financial condition, is essentially kind of free, right? So then if somebody had a different motivation, the incentive could be, of course, that maybe the transaction fee was for me, not to speculate, but 5 Tezos, let's say, right? But then to trigger my chord machine, it would cost 1 Tezos with each trigger. And somebody now wants to use that chord machine in their own larger musical structure. They could do so, but they have to then take into account that vending machine will always need to receive sufficient fundings for it to be triggered. So if that person using my vending machine that costs 5 Tezos per each trigger, if they want to make money themselves, they might perhaps need to construct even more expensive machine, right? So in a sense, it's not a platform in which we are expecting to capitalize on. We are for now creating this as a research project, as something to serve the blockchain community and enable this type of interoperable generative artworks. Then, of course, we are envisioning that while various people might want to use this in various ways, either as open source community or to build something financial on top of it. Then, of course, what we want to do also ourselves, we want to build one of possible decentralized apps on top of it. So we are also starting. We're also starting a kind of company later with possibility to enable a simple user interface, to say, a simple user interface where you can actually create these types of artworks and explore these types of artworks. So in that environment, because I think I'm just talking a lot, right?
No.
Your question was about AI agents. So now I think you will have a very proper understanding of the role of an AI agent. Is essentially that it could participate.
Yes.
It could participate in such a network, either, of course, as a part of a smart contract, So the vending machine could be essentially, when it's being triggered, the vending machine could make an API call to an LLM to perform some operation for the artwork, right? It doesn't have to be a major chord. It can be ask an AI agent to do something, come back, and then return the output via some blockchain oracle. Or we could see not as a secondary agent, but as a first level agent, right? So if I sit on the computer and I manipulate these musical structures on the blockchain, maybe we can have a reasoning agent do the same. So that's why the whole structure we envision it as an API itself, because then we can connect various types of posthuman agents into that blockchain network to manipulate it, not only from the inside, but also from the outside, essentially.
Outside. Thank you. It was a great explanation, actually, with all these examples.
Happy. Yeah.
Do you think you also mentioned there's technical barriers to like implementing fully interoperable decentralized systems? Like, how can we solve the standardization issue? Like,
yeah, the main standardization issue is that we have various types of blockchains, but then within one blockchain, if you work, I think this is pretty much enough for the trust enforcement. So like the first reason of doing something on the blockchain is if you want, right, to manage this digital scarcity in some way that doesn't necessarily include an intermediary. But then I think what you are referring to is actually that at the time of publication of that chapter, I really didn't know how to solve that technically. But now, as I met a kind of a genius computer programmer friend working on this together, a lot of these are actually overcome. So what I would just say, you're recording this, right? So this will be on YouTube. but this is going slow, this is going really slow. But at some point we should really have. And now during my research actually on this, we are trying to create a collaborative piece already based on that system. With a concert in November in Den Haag, which we will actually see 2 robot pianos perform a blockchain-based collaborative composition structure that use the system for the first time. But then with time, I think we need to take steps to retest this properly. But with time, we will make this available to broader public, and I think it's pretty exciting, to see how this unfolds.
Yeah. And what about the platforms? Like, do you think major music platforms will eventually adopt Web3 structures through like NFTs, DAOs, or what do you think?
I really don't know, and I'm not an expert to be saying on this. But we had Marcus O'Dyer from University College London once as our guest for a research session at Orpheus Institute, and you can see in the book actually, right? So here's the book. You can read Marcus O'Dyer chapters exactly on various types of value on the blockchain, and the clues that Marcus was giving us is essentially that we are still waiting for this kind of mobile moment of blockchain, right? So if we see blockchain as a very early technology, and if you think in terms of how long it took for the internet to come into like a broad adoption that everyone is using right now, there's this famous saying that in the 90s, when people wanted to pitch their startup based on the internet, they first had to tell their investors what is the internet, right? So then it took quite some time for the internet to become kind of mobilized, and blockchain didn't really have this yet. We have this. You need to be a bit of an expert to understand what is a digital wallet, even though digital wallets are now very simple to use and gradually more integrated with various types of platforms. It's still either the public is a bit reserved to use this, or either you need an expertise, or you need some really good reason to be doing things on the blockchain. But gradually, I think we will see, as we know, now we are seeing a lot of these types of blockchains like XRP that they don't really want to be a separate financial system, right? But they want to integrate maybe with the banks, so they don't work anymore in this anarchistic with this anarchistic
approach.
vision of replacing the institutional structures, but rather maybe changing them, right? So while I'm saying I'm an artist and programmer, so I'm not so much into knowing, but from what I think and from what Marcus said, probably when the mobile moment happens, then I think people don't even know that they performing operations on the blockchain, right? That's the whole. That's how Marcus described it.
Also not very user friendly.
But the mobile moment would be, of course, like now we're performing transactions on Revolut, and on Revolut you actually can see it's kind of very simple. What a dollar is or what a Bitcoin is almost the same, right? It's just a different number, and you can have few clicks to transfer between. So maybe it's difficult to imagine what that would be for the arts in the future, right? I think we need to get accustomed still about the ownership of digital items so much. What we can see in the Generation Z right now, when they play Fortnite and they want to have another item, for them this is as meaningful already as having a new piece of physical object, right? So I heard this from a cousin actually playing Fortnite that his dream is to have this item in the game, right? And for me, it's a bit difficult to understand. Okay, you really you want this, and why? This is digital. This is just digital information. But from the point of view of blockchain, that's exactly it, right? You can own a piece of experience, own a piece of art, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam. I think we asked all our questions. Thank you so much for your time and all these great explanations, and also all these very, very amazing examples, actually.
Thank you so much for having me and for being so generous with your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you, Adam.
Thank you.